You Can Master Tiberius. Not the guy that prevented a civil war in, stimulated the economy of, and ruled Rome. No, but this guy.
Bonjour.
Definitely not a Khajiit. Tiberius is a damage champion in the hero-based shooter Paladins. He's simple and straightforward and is one of the few free starter champions. Despite his overall consistency and solid power, no one really plays him. He's extremely underrated and can deal ridiculous damage, but only if you do a few things right first. Tiberius's basic attacks are these thick, slow-firing, high-damage projectiles. They can bounce off walls and have a 9-click capacity before needing to reload. What makes them cool is that you can get some neat situational chip damage if you passed geometry in high school with a B or better. Or, if you took and passed the honors version, some really rewarding and neat executes. His combat trance ability makes him run a little faster and throw attacks a little faster too. Yeah, that's kinda it. Kinda seems boring on its own, but it's a truly absurd ability with a few modifications as we'll come to see later on. His other attack, Heavy Blade, is essentially a stronger basic attack that can't bounce, goes through shields and enemies, lodges in terrain, and can be recalled. Something that is important to note here is that at the beginning of a match, Paladins let you choose between one of 3 passives that change an aspect of the character's kit that you're playing. They are called talents. This makes things interesting for everyone, but especially for Tiberius, as his blade gets scary with a talent called Tigron's Fury, which makes the blade explode instead of recall and reactivation of the ability. That's when you get into some really neat stuff and huge burst, but I'll tell you more about that later. Tiberius has a movement ability called Crouching Tigron, which sounds fancy really, but it's just a basic leap. He's almost fully committed when he jumps because of his wind-up animation and very little air control. To counteract this drawback though, while in the air, Tiberius can use any of his other abilities, allowing you to get in some more damage while flying and more importantly, look extremely cool while doing it. He's extremely predictable in the air, so keep that in mind. You gotta pay attention and deem if it is safe to jump, or you'll cringe a little bit at the fool you've just made yourself because of your boneheaded or careless jump that directly got you killed. With his other talent, Vicious Assault, Tiberius gains a second charge of his jump, and it deals some area damage practically equivalent to the basic attack in the area of which he lands in, allowing for some aggressive play if you're smart about when you jump onto someone. His ult swaps his kit into a sort of blade form, swapping out his basic attack and heavy blade for 2 other abilities that share a 5-use resource pool. The first ability is a long, fast dash that deals a bit of damage, and the second, a whirling, slow kinda hop that gives him damage immunity, kinda, and on landing, it deals some hefty area damage around him. Tiberius can still be executed and crowd controlled through his second ability though. Tiberius' ult seems kinda weak, with its relatively low killing power considering all of his ult's quirks, and you'd be right in that sense, but the true value of his ult comes with its high mobility and damage immunity utility, which I appreciate for an ultimate in a hero shooter, especially on a damage character, where they could have easily gone with some basic, damage-dealing ultimate ability, yet they went with something more inconspicuously unique and nuanced. That's nice and all, but to play this French cat well, first you gotta know some tech, which for normal people is just a fancy gamer word for unintended game design or gameplay interactions being used intentionally as a strategy, just not as maliciously or as unfairly as something like exploiting is. Paladin's card and talent system, a system that lets you build loadouts that augment certain aspects of a champion and or their abilities, which is one of my favorite parts of Paladins as a whole, is what makes Tiberius a truly cool cat. One of Tiberius' cards, Honed Senses, gives combat trance an ultimate generating effect. At setting the card to a maximum level of 5, Honed Senses generates 3% of ultimate charge per second of the ability's active duration, which is 4 seconds. That's a net 12% charge generation, all from pressing a single button for his ult. This, coupled with hitting most, if not all of your shots during the ability, and with a passive ultimate generation cherry on top, you can get just around 45% 100% ultimate charge in just one ability. Getting the in-match items Chronos and Morale Boost, which reduce cooldowns and increase ultimate generation potency respectively, can make this go even higher, up to around 55% ultimate generation per ability use and attack string, and allow this dynamic to happen more often. And big number equal good. Like I said earlier, the unique utility that Tiberius' ult gives him has a lot of options too. It's obvious that his ult gives him some insane mobility, but the damage immunity is slept on his hop as well. Given that you can swap to his blade form fast enough, there really are limitless possibilities for Tiberius in terms of damage evasion. Simply timing his twirling secondary attack can allow you to survive most damage ults. If you decide to try and deal damage with his ult, try and mix up dashes and twirls for the given scenario. Dashes deal less damage but make it hard for the enemy to hit you, but the inverse is true for the twirl. A tip that I'd suggest is to always save at least one ultimate charge for a dash to disengage from the fight and to then lead that ultimate ending into a jump so that you have an efficient escape no matter what the situation is, because you can really maroon yourself if you use all your charges and end up in a bad position. There is tech for Tiberius where crouching Tigron can be cancelled mid-jump with his ult to reset the cooldown of it as long as you are fast enough so that you can use it again immediately to cover long distances after you cancel the ult. This effectively functions as a trade of 25% ultimate charge for another immediate jump, giving you even another gameplay option. Without really getting into the weeds here, you have a ton of different options with Tiberius' ult. Just use that intuition of yours to mix and match to your heart's content. There's so many different options you have. Tiberius then, with his ridiculous attainment speeds and options with his ult, is when he feels the best. When he starts to feel like a character that has two forms with different fighting styles. While not in his ultimate, Tiberius has some crazy damage too. Tigron's Fury is that passive that I touched on earlier, that can be chosen at the start of the match, which gives Heavy Blade an explosion effect instead of recall. While the initial throw does less damage than without this talent, it is an overall net increase of damage because the reactivation lockout period is significantly shorter with Tigron's Fury, or simply put, it's fast. If the conditions are right, Tiberius can defeat most non-tank characters in just 2 attacks and a Heavy Blade, as long as the initial throw connects with the ensuing explosion. Because of that lockout period, the timing can be tricky to perfect for the reactivation of Heavy Blade, as the better you are at timing it, the faster it will deal that burst damage. So, there is this tech that you do called a half button press to optimize this timing. When you use Heavy Blade, do not let go of the button in preparation to press it again. Instead, keep it held down while you wait for the blade to be ready to be reactivated, or for that lockout period to end, in other words. Then you can just release the button, which registers as a full press, but is ultimately less on your end than pressing and releasing the button twice, all while achieving the same effect of reactivating the ability. And there you have it. You can master Tiberius. Anything that wasn't mentioned really wasn't much of importance. If you watched the whole way through, you're greatly appreciated. All the best.